Commander Alex Turner watched the stars from Deep Space Station Omega, a massive fortress that guarded the edge of human space. The station was built in the 4th year after the Great Severance, when humanity realized they needed better defenses than just quantum barriers. Alex had been there since the beginning, watching alien ships approach the borders and turn away when the automated warnings activated. The warning message was simple and clear in over 200 alien languages. Human space was closed. Any attempt to cross the barriers would be considered an act of war. Most aliens listened to the warning and left quickly. A few tried to test the defenses and learned that humans meant what they said. Behind the barriers, humanity was changing in ways the aliens never expected. Without the Council's technology restrictions, human scientists were free to explore ideas that had been forbidden for decades. Dr. Rachel Green led the breakthrough that changed everything. She discovered how to fold space in ways that made instant communication possible across any distance. The old galactic communication network used quantum entanglement that took hours or days to send messages between star systems. Rachel's dimensional communication system worked instantly, no matter how far apart the sender and receiver were. Within 2 years, every human colony was connected by this new network. Engineer Carl Brooks took the dimensional physics even further. He designed ships that could step outside normal space and travel between dimensions. What used to take months of travel through hyperspace could now be done in days. Human ships could cross entire galaxies faster than alien vessels could travel between neighboring star systems. But the real changes were happening in human society itself. Without aliens to depend on or please, humans began working together like never before. The colonial worlds that had been scattered and isolated became parts of a unified civilization. Resources flowed freely between planets. Knowledge was shared instantly across dimensional communication networks. Admiral Betty Walsh commanded the new Earth Defense Fleet from her headquarters on Luna Base. Every day, her officers reported on alien activities beyond the barriers. What they saw was not encouraging for the galaxy. Without human military patrols, pirate fleets grew bold and aggressive. Trade routes that had been safe for generations became hunting grounds for criminals. The hegemony of Kralthek, satisfied with conquering New Terra, decided to expand further. They attacked 3 neighboring civilizations and enslaved their populations. The Quantum Collective tried to maintain order, but their shared mind was too slow to respond to multiple threats. The Zephyrians focused on protecting their own territory and ignored calls for help from smaller species. Other council members withdrew into defensive positions and stopped cooperating with each other. Admiral Walsh received daily intelligence reports from human agents who had remained in alien space during the severance. These humans had changed their identities and lived quietly among alien populations, watching and reporting what they saw. Their reports painted a picture of a galaxy falling apart. The Council's authority was crumbling. Species that had been loyal members for centuries began questioning whether the Council could protect them. Some formed their own military alliances. Others hired mercenary groups for defense. A few even considered surrendering to aggressive neighbors rather than fighting hopeless battles alone. But the most disturbing reports came from the Galactic Rim, where something new was happening. Automated probe ships had detected strange energy signatures moving between star systems. Entire planets were going silent without explanation. When investigation teams were sent to find out what happened, they never returned. Dr. Helen Price, who had remained with the Council as their top human scientist, sent secret messages to human space through hidden communication channels. Her reports described Council meetings filled with panic and confusion. The aliens who had once been so confident in their superiority were now terrified of threats they couldn't understand or fight. Meanwhile, human civilization continued to advance at incredible speed. Without the Council's rules about what technologies could be developed, human researchers made breakthrough after breakthrough. They learned to manipulate gravity, create energy from nothing, and build materials stronger than anything nature produced. The New Terra refugees became symbols of human determination. Instead of being bitter about losing their homes, they threw themselves into building something better. The new colony they established, called Haven, became the most advanced human settlement outside Earth itself. They developed farming techniques that could feed millions on previously barren worlds. Children who had been forced to leave New Terra grew up to become the brightest engineers and scientists of their generation. They remembered the aliens who had abandoned them, and they were determined to prove that humanity could survive and thrive without galactic civilization. Captain Maria Lopez commanded scout ships that patrolled the inner edges of the barriers. Her crews sometimes picked up alien communication signals that leaked through the quantum fields. The messages were growing more desperate each year. Trade networks were collapsing. Colonial governments were falling to pirates and raiders. Species that had lived in peace for centuries were at war with each other. Alex Turner remembered the early years when some humans had questioned whether the severance was the right choice. A few colonies had wanted to negotiate with the Council and try to find a compromise, but those doubts faded as reports arrived, showing how the galaxy was tearing itself apart without human help. The aliens had made their choice when they decided human lives were acceptable losses. Now they were learning to live with the consequences of that decision. Every species that fell to pirates or raiders, every colony that was abandoned to raiders, every trade route that became too dangerous to use was proof that the galaxy had needed humanity far more than humanity had needed the galaxy. As Alex watched, another alien scout ship approached the barriers and turned away. He wondered how much longer the silence would continue. Intelligence reports suggested that something big was coming from beyond the galactic rim, something that made even the Kralthak look like a minor threat. When that time came, the aliens would probably remember humanity again. They would send messages asking for help, begging for forgiveness, promising better treatment if humans would just save them one more time. Alex smiled grimly and returned to his duties. If the aliens wanted human help again, they would have to offer much more than empty promises. The galaxy had taught humanity a hard lesson about the value of respect. Soon it would be time for the galaxy to learn that lesson in return. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his ship, staring at the empty space where alien vessels used to patrol. 15 years had passed since that terrible day when everything changed. He remembered it like it happened yesterday. The day humanity said goodbye to the galaxy forever. Ambassador Lisa Carter had been Earth's voice in the Galactic Council for 12 years. She was smart, tough, and believed that humans could work with aliens to make the galaxy a better place. The Council met on a huge space station called Nexus Prime, where hundreds of different alien species gathered to make decisions about trade, wars, and peace. For decades, humans had been useful to the Council. They were good fighters, clever engineers, and willing to do dangerous jobs that other species avoided. When pirates attacked trade routes, human ships went to stop them. When colonies needed protection, human soldiers volunteered to help. When new technology was needed, human scientists worked day and night to solve problems. But the aliens never treated humans as equals. They saw humans as useful tools, not real partners. In council meetings, human ideas were often ignored. When important decisions were made, aliens rarely asked what humans thought. The Zephyrians, with their blue skin and proud attitudes, acted like humans were children who needed guidance. The Quantum Collective, a group of aliens who shared one mind, treated humans like interesting but primitive creatures. The breaking point came when the Kralthak hegemony started threatening trade routes near human space. They were aggressive aliens with sharp teeth and red eyes who loved to fight and conquer. Their leader demanded that the Council give them the human colony of New Terra, or they would attack merchant ships throughout that sector. New Terra was home to 50,000 humans. Families lived there, children went to school there, and people had built their lives there over 30 years. It was not just another planet, it was a human home. The Council met in emergency session. Lisa Carter spoke passionately about defending New Terra. She explained that humans would fight to protect their people, and she asked the Council for support. She reminded them of all the times humans had risked their lives for alien colonies, but the aliens were afraid of the Kralthak. Trade was more important to them than human lives. Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrians stood up with his tall, thin body and cold blue eyes. He declared that New Terra was an acceptable loss for galactic peace. The Quantum Collective agreed with a voice that sounded like many people speaking at once. One by one, other species voted to abandon the human colony. Lisa Carter felt something break inside her chest as she watched the vote. These aliens, whom she had worked with for years, were willing to sacrifice 50,000 human lives without even trying to find another solution. When the final vote came, only 3 small species supported humanity. Everyone else voted to give New Terra to the Kralthak. Lisa stood slowly and walked to the center of the council chamber. Her voice was quiet, but everyone could hear her clearly. She said that humanity had given everything to the galactic community. Human blood had been spilled on dozens of worlds to protect alien lives. Human minds had solved countless problems for alien civilizations. Human hearts had hoped for true friendship among the stars. But friendship required respect, and the Council had shown that they would never respect humanity. They saw humans as expendable servants, not as equals worthy of protection. If that was how the galaxy wanted to treat Earth's children, then Earth's children would leave the galaxy to its fate. She announced that humanity was withdrawing from all galactic affairs immediately. All human military support would end. All technology sharing would stop. All trade agreements would be canceled. The borders of human space would be closed to alien ships forever. The aliens laughed. Chancellor Vextar said that humans would be back within a year, begging to rejoin galactic civilization. How could primitive humans survive without alien technology and trade? The Quantum Collective calculated that human society would collapse within months without galactic support. Lisa Carter smiled sadly and said that the aliens would learn how wrong they were. She walked out of the council chamber for the last time. Within hours, every human ship in alien space began the journey home. Every human diplomat packed their belongings and left alien worlds. Every human scientist stopped sharing their research with alien colleagues. The evacuation of New Terra began immediately. Human military ships arrived before the Kralthak could attack. Every person, every animal, every piece of important equipment was loaded onto transports and taken to safety. When the Kralthak finally came to claim their prize, they found empty buildings and bare ground. Jake Morrison had been a young officer then, helping to coordinate the massive evacuation. He watched families cry as they left homes they had built with their own hands. He saw children asking why they had to leave their friends behind. He felt anger burning in his chest at the aliens who cared so little for human suffering. The journey back to human space took months. Ship after ship crossed the borders, carrying refugees and soldiers and civilians who had lived among aliens for years. As the last human vessel entered the solar system, automated defense systems activated around all human territory. Quantum barriers went up, blocking alien ships from entering. Communication networks were disconnected from galactic frequencies. For the first time in a century, humanity was alone. The aliens kept expecting humans to come crawling back. They sent diplomatic messages that bounced off the barriers. They offered small concessions and minor trade deals. When pirate attacks increased without human patrols, they promised better treatment if humans would resume their security duties. But the barriers stayed up. The silence continued, and behind those barriers something was happening that the aliens could never have imagined. Jake Morrison touched the controls of his ship and smiled. The aliens had made a terrible mistake when they decided human lives didn't matter. Now they were about to learn just how badly they had misjudged the species they had thrown away. In human space, amazing things had been happening during the years of silence. The galaxy was about to discover what humans could accomplish when they were finally free to reach their full potential. Chancellor Vextar stood in the council chamber on Nexus Prime, staring at displays that showed the worst news he had ever seen. The galaxy was dying, and there was nothing the council could do to stop it. The first reports had come from the Outer Rim territories 6 months ago. Entire star systems had gone silent overnight. When investigation teams arrived, they found nothing but empty space where planets used to be. No debris, no radiation, no signs of what had happened. It was as if the planets had simply been erased from existence. Dr. Helen Price studied the data with growing horror. She had worked with the Council for 20 years, ever since most humans had withdrawn from galactic space. As the Council's top scientist, she had seen many threats over the years, but nothing like this. The attackers were machines, but not like any artificial intelligence the galaxy had encountered before. They moved through space in massive swarms, consuming everything they touched. Planets, moons, asteroids, even the energy from stars was absorbed and converted into more machines. The locals had started calling them devourer swarms, and the name fit perfectly. What made the swarms so terrifying was how quickly they learned and adapted. The first defense fleets sent to fight them used standard plasma weapons and particle beams. The machines analyzed the attacks, modified their armor, and became immune to those weapons within hours. The next wave of defenders tried quantum torpedoes and gravity bombs, Again, the swarms adapted and continued their advance. Each system they consumed made them stronger and smarter. They incorporated the technology of every species they devoured, adding new capabilities to their endless hunger. What had started as isolated attacks on rim worlds had become a wave of destruction, rolling toward the galaxy's heart. The hegemony of Kralthak, so fierce and aggressive when fighting other organic species, lasted exactly 4 days against the swarms. Their powerful warships and brutal tactics meant nothing against enemies that could adapt to any weapon, and felt no fear or pain. The Kralthak worlds were stripped bare, their populations converted into mechanical components. Dr. Price made a discovery that chilled her to the bone. Hidden in the swarm technology signatures were patterns that looked familiar. She ran the data through analysis programs and found traces of human engineering principles. Somehow, the machines were using modified versions of technology that humans had developed decades ago. But these weren't the primitive human designs the Council remembered. The swarms had taken basic human concepts and evolved them far beyond anything current human science could produce. It was as if someone had taken a human blueprint and spent years perfecting it with resources and knowledge no organic species possessed. The implications were terrifying. If the swarms were using advanced human technology, then even the superior weapons and defenses the galaxy possessed might not be enough to stop them. The machines weren't just consuming the galaxy, they were becoming better at it with each victory. Ambassador Kevin Ross had served the Council faithfully for 30 years, working to maintain diplomatic relationships between species. Now he faced the hardest mission of his career. The Council was sending him to human space to ask for help. The request went against everything the Council had believed for 15 years. They had convinced themselves that humanity was primitive and dependent, that the barriers around human space were just a temporary tantrum that would eventually end. Now they were forced to admit that they might have been wrong about everything. Kevin's ship, Harmony's Edge, approached the quantum barriers around human territory with a diplomatic flag and open communication channels. The barriers had grown stronger and more sophisticated over the years, creating a wall that no alien technology could penetrate. As they drew closer, automated warning systems activated. The message was broadcast in perfect Council standard, though the voice had a distinctly human accent. Human space was closed to all alien vessels. Any attempt to cross the barriers would be considered an act of war. The ship had 30 seconds to change course or face the consequences. Kevin activated his diplomatic credentials and broadcast an emergency message. He identified himself as an official Council representative on a mission of critical importance. He requested permission to speak with human authorities about a threat that endangered all galactic civilization. The response was silence. Kevin tried again, explaining that the devourer swarms were destroying everything in their path. He described the fall of the Kralthak, the collapse of rim defenses, and the desperate situation facing billions of innocent civilians. He begged for just a few minutes to explain the crisis. Still silence. For 3 days, Harmony's Edge waited at the barriers. Kevin sent message after message, each one more desperate than the last. He admitted that the Council had made mistakes in the past. He acknowledged that humans had been treated unfairly. He promised that things would be different if humanity would just help save the galaxy. On the 3rd day, Kevin received a response. It was not from human authorities, but from an automated system. The message was brief and final. Humanity had withdrawn from galactic affairs permanently. The Council had made its priorities clear when it declared human lives acceptable losses. Now the Council would learn to solve its problems without human assistance. Kevin returned to Nexus Prime with the bitter news. The Council chamber erupted in angry debates. Some species blamed humans for being selfish and cruel. Others pointed out that the Council had created this situation by alienating humanity in the first place. Chancellor Vextar called for order, but his authority was weaker than ever. 3 more star systems had fallen to the swarms while Kevin was attempting diplomacy. Refugee fleets were streaming toward the galactic core, carrying survivors who told horrific stories of planets being consumed in hours. The Quantum Collective analyzed the situation with their shared consciousness and reached a disturbing conclusion. At the current rate of expansion, the swarms would reach the core worlds within 2 years. No known weapon could stop them. No defense could slow them down significantly. Without help, galactic civilization would be extinct within a decade. Dr. Price worked frantically to find some weakness in the swarm technology, some flaw that could be exploited. But every analysis led to the same conclusion. The machines were using principles that the galaxy's best scientists couldn't fully understand, based on innovations that were decades ahead of current knowledge. The terrible irony was becoming clear to everyone. Humanity, the species the Council had dismissed as primitive and expendable, had apparently been the most advanced civilization in the galaxy all along. Their withdrawal had not only removed the galaxy's best military force, it had taken away the only minds that might have been able to stop the swarms. As more worlds fell and the tide of refugees grew larger, even the proudest Council members began to understand the magnitude of their mistake. They had thrown away their greatest asset for the sake of political convenience. They had chosen temporary peace over the alliance that might have saved them all. Now the swarms were coming for everyone, and the humans who might have been able to stop them were hidden behind barriers that no one could cross. The galaxy that had once looked down on humanity was about to learn whether its arrogance had doomed every living thing among the stars. President Laura Davis sat in the great chamber of the Human Colonial Senate on Earth, listening to the most important debate in human history. Representatives from 47 human worlds had gathered to decide whether humanity should help the galaxy that had abandoned them 15 years ago. Intelligence reports were spread across holographic displays throughout the chamber. Commander Steve Johnson's reconnaissance teams had spent months gathering information about the Devourer swarms, using stealth ships that could slip past alien defenses undetected. What they found painted a terrifying picture of mechanical destruction spreading across the galaxy like a plague. Senator Paul Martinez from Haven Colony stood to address the assembly. His world had been built by refugees from New Terra, the colony the Council had been willing to sacrifice for political convenience. His voice carried the anger of 50,000 people who remembered being treated as acceptable losses. Paul argued that humanity owed the galaxy nothing. The aliens had made their choice when they decided human lives didn't matter. For 15 years, humans had built a better civilization behind the barriers while the galaxy tore itself apart with wars and greed. Why should human soldiers die to save people who had never cared whether humans lived or died? Many senators agreed with Paul's position. Senator Carol Wright from the mining colonies pointed out that human resources were precious and shouldn't be wasted on ungrateful aliens. Senator Dan Foster from the agricultural worlds reminded everyone how the Council had restricted human expansion and limited human technology development for decades. But other voices spoke for intervention. Senator Amy Parker from the research colonies argued that the swarms would eventually reach human space no matter what. If the galaxy fell, humanity would face the machines alone, without allies or advance warning of new swarm adaptations. Dr. Nathan King, humanity's leading expert on artificial intelligence, addressed the Senate with disturbing news about the true nature of the threat. His analysis of swarm behavior patterns suggested that these machines were not just consuming matter and energy. They were absorbing and integrating the knowledge of every species they encountered. Each civilization the swarms devoured made them more intelligent and adaptable. The Krelthak had added aggression and tactical cunning. The peaceful Etherians had contributed advanced mathematics and physics. The industrial Corellians had provided manufacturing techniques and resource management skills. If the swarms consumed the entire galaxy, they would possess the accumulated knowledge and technology of hundreds of species. When they finally turned toward human space, humanity would face enemies that had learned from every military tradition, every scientific breakthrough, and every technological innovation in galactic history. Captain Maria Lopez presented footage from her covert reconnaissance missions to swarm-occupied systems. The images were horrifying beyond imagination. Planets stripped down to their cores, their entire mass converted into mechanical components, orbital factories that stretched across entire solar systems, producing new swarms at an incredible rate. But the most disturbing discovery was what the swarms did with captured populations. Instead of simply killing them, the machines were converting organic beings into hybrid creatures that retained their intelligence but served the swarm's purposes. Entire species had been turned into living computers, their minds integrated into the collective consciousness that guided the mechanical hordes. The Senate chamber fell silent as senators realized what this meant. If the swarms reached human space, death would not be the worst fate awaiting humanity. They would be transformed into tools for the machines, their thoughts and memories preserved but twisted to serve their conquerors. Dr. King delivered the final piece of devastating news. His analysis of swarm technology showed that they were learning at an exponential rate. Every battle, every encounter, every defensive system they encountered taught them new lessons. The machines that attacked the Rim world 6 months ago were primitive compared to the ones currently advancing toward the core worlds. If humanity waited much longer, even their advanced technology might not be enough to stop the swarms. The window for effective action was closing rapidly. In another year or two, the machines might become too powerful for anyone to defeat. President Davis had listened to the debates for 3 days without speaking. As the elected leader of all human worlds, the final decision would be hers. She understood the arguments on both sides and felt the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. She thought about the children of New Terra who had grown up in exile, working twice as hard as everyone else to prove their worth. She remembered the human soldiers who had died protecting alien colonies that never thanked them for their sacrifice. She considered the years of isolation that had allowed humanity to reach its true potential, but she also thought about the millions of innocent beings across the galaxy who had played no role in the Council's decisions. Children on alien worlds who would be converted into machine components. Artists and teachers and farmers whose only crime was belonging to species with arrogant leaders. Most importantly, she thought about humanity's future. The swarms represented a threat unlike anything the galaxy had ever faced. If they succeeded in consuming all other intelligent life, humanity would eventually stand alone against enemies with the knowledge and resources of an entire galaxy. President Davis stood and addressed the Senate. She acknowledged the valid arguments for isolation, the justified anger at the Council's treatment of humanity, and the desire to let the aliens face the consequences of their choices. But she reminded the senators that humanity's greatest strength had always been their willingness to do what was right. Even when it was difficult, the galaxy had treated humans badly, but abandoning billions of innocent people to mechanical horror would make humanity no better than the Council. Members who had been willing to sacrifice New Terra, if humans wanted to claim moral superiority over alien civilizations, they had to act according to higher standards more practically. The swarms had to be stopped before they became too powerful to defeat. Every day of delay gave the machines more time to learn, adapt, and grow stronger. The galaxy's fate and humanity's survival were linked whether anyone liked it or not. But if humanity was going to save the galaxy, it would be on human terms. No more junior partnerships or subordinate roles. No more following alien orders or accepting alien limitations. This time, humanity would lead from the front and make the decisions that mattered. The vote was closer than anyone expected, but President Davis's leadership carried the day. By a margin of 6 votes, the Human Colonial Senate authorized military intervention against the devourer swarms. The barriers around human space would be lowered, and the galaxy would see what humanity had become during the years of silence. As senators filed out of the chamber, President Davis remained behind, staring at star charts that showed swarm positions throughout the galaxy. In a few days, human warships would cross the barriers for the first time in 15 years. The galaxy that had abandoned humanity was about to discover whether its children had forgiven them enough to save their lives. The quantum barriers around human space flickered and died, revealing a sight that stunned every alien monitoring station in the galaxy. Where once there had been empty space protected by energy fields, now hung a fleet of ships beyond anything the galaxy had ever imagined. Admiral Gary Parker stood on the bridge of his flagship Phoenix Dawn, watching as thousands of human vessels emerged from dimensional fold space. These were not the simple warships aliens remembered from 15 years ago. These were weapons of war that incorporated technology decades ahead of anything in galactic civilization. The Phoenix Dawn itself was larger than most alien space stations, its hull made from materials that bent light around them and absorbed energy weapons like sponges soaking up water. The ship's main guns could crack planets in half, while its shields manipulated space-time to deflect attacks into parallel dimensions. But the flagship was just one vessel among thousands. Human engineering had produced cruisers that could phase through solid matter, destroyers that moved faster than light without using hyperspace, and fighters so small and quick that alien sensors couldn't track them. The aliens watching this fleet emerge had expected to see refugees fleeing their isolated territory, Instead, they saw a military force that made their own fleets look like children's toys. The humans hadn't spent 15 years hiding behind barriers and fear. They had used that time to become something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral Parker opened communication channels to Nexus Prime and delivered a message that sent shockwaves through the council chambers. Humanity had decided to deal with the swarm threat, but not as junior partners or subordinate allies. Human forces would operate under human command, using human strategies, with human objectives. Any alien government that wanted human protection could request it, but they would accept human authority in all military matters. Any species that interfered with human operations would be treated as hostile. The galaxy had proven it couldn't handle galactic-level threats, so humanity would handle them instead. Chancellor Vextar wanted to object to human arrogance, but his words died in his throat as reports arrived of the first human strike against swarm positions. Captain Nicole Butler's assault teams had used dimensional phase technology to appear inside swarm vessels, tearing apart the mechanical horrors from within before they could adapt to the attack. The swarms had never faced enemies who could appear anywhere instantly, ignoring shields and armor completely. Human soldiers materialized in the heart of swarm factories, planting exotic matter bombs that collapsed entire facilities into microscopic black holes. Strike teams phased into command nodes and destroyed the controlling intelligences, before disappearing back into fold space. But humanity's greatest advantage wasn't their technology. It was their tactical brilliance. General Chris Murphy coordinated attacks across dozens of star systems simultaneously, using the dimensional communication network to manage complex operations in real time. While swarm forces responded to threats in one sector, human fleets struck undefended targets in completely different regions. The machines tried to adapt to human tactics, but they couldn't predict attacks that came from outside normal space. They attempted to modify their defenses against phase technology, but human scientists led by Dr. Lisa Foster developed new variations faster than the swarms could counter them. For the first time since the invasion began, the mechanical tide was not just stopped but pushed back. Star systems that had been lost for months were liberated in days. Swarm factories that had been converting entire planets into war machines were reduced to cosmic dust by human singularity weapons. The galaxy watched in amazement as humanity demonstrated not just technological superiority, but the strategic thinking that had once made them the Council's finest military force. Human commanders didn't just fight the swarms. They anticipated their moves, countered their adaptations, and stayed 3 steps ahead of mechanical intelligence that had seemed unstoppable. But the swarms had one final surprise. As human forces pushed deeper into occupied territory, the machines began combining their scattered fleets into a massive armada near the galactic core. Millions of swarm vessels, each one adapted with technology from dozens of consumed civilizations, gathered for a final assault on the remaining inhabited worlds. President Davis herself took command of the human response, leading the largest fleet in human history toward the ultimate confrontation. As her armada approached the swarm positions, dimensional rifts began opening around the battlefield. More swarm reinforcements were arriving from parallel dimensions, called from realities where they had already consumed entire galaxies. The battle that followed would be remembered as long as intelligent life existed in the galaxy. Human ships fought mechanical horrors across light years of space, their exotic weapons creating explosions that could be seen from neighboring star systems. The Phoenix Dawn led the charge directly into the heart of the swarm armada, its shields deflecting attacks that would have vaporized entire planets. Captain Butler's phase strike teams materialized throughout the enemy fleet, targeting the command nodes that coordinated swarm movements. But the machines had learned to distribute their intelligence across multiple platforms, making them harder to disable with single strikes. As the battle reached its climax, President Davis realized that conventional attacks wouldn't be enough to stop the dimensional reinforcements. The rifts were bringing in swarm fleets faster than human weapons could destroy them. If the battle continued, the machines would eventually overwhelm even humanity's superior technology through sheer numbers. She made the hardest decision of her life, ordering the deployment of humanity's most devastating weapon. Singularity missiles, each one containing a miniature black hole, were fired directly into the dimensional rifts. The artificial black holes collapsed the rifts from within, trapping the swarm reinforcements in dead space between realities. Cut off from their reinforcements and facing technology they couldn't adapt to quickly enough, the remaining swarms finally began to fall. Human fleets methodically destroyed every mechanical vessel, every factory, every trace of the intelligence that had threatened to consume the galaxy. When the last swarm ship was reduced to atoms, silence fell across the battlefield. The mechanical plague that had terrified the galaxy for months was gone. Destroyed by the humans the Council had dismissed as primitive and expendable. The aftermath brought changes that reshaped galactic civilization forever. The Council chambers on Nexus Prime were rebuilt with humanity occupying the central position. President Davis became the acknowledged leader of the new Galactic Alliance, with other species competing for human attention and approval. Ambassador Lisa Carter, now older but no less determined, addressed the new assembly with terms that would have been unthinkable before the Swarm War. Human colonies would have complete sovereignty over their territories. Human technology would be shared only with proven allies who respected human values. Most importantly, never again would human lives be considered acceptable losses for political convenience. The galaxy had learned that humanity's greatest weapon was not their advanced technology or superior tactics, but their unwillingness to abandon those who needed protection. Even when the galaxy had abandoned them, humans had returned to save lives that didn't belong to their own species. As new exploration fleets prepared to venture beyond the galactic rim, searching for other swarm outbreaks that might threaten intelligent life, the galaxy understood that a new age had begun. The silence was over, humanity had returned, and the stars would never be the same. The species that had once looked down on humans now looked up to them with respect, gratitude, and the knowledge that they owed their continued existence to the people they had foolishly pushed away. In saving the galaxy, humanity had not just proven their worth, they had claimed their rightful place as the guardians of all sentient life among the stars.